According to Boston 25, the MSP wants over $176,000 to review any public records requests into the investigation of former MSP recruit Enrique Delgado Garcia, who died almost 2 months ago, and we still have not heard a peep into any updates regarding that investigation. Could we be potentially looking at another cover-up? Let's find out, shall we? Hello, and welcome to Alexasrewm, where we are not lawyers, we are not medical professionals, we are not law enforcement, we are just people. People who have opinions about all things going on in the true crime community, including this exclusive brought to you in part by Carrie Kavanaugh. I guess she is partners with Ted Daniel at Boston 25 News, where they had requested from the Massachusetts State Police for any public records and the police report into the investigation of the former MSP recruit who was brutally unalived during a, quote, boxing exercise. Yeah, okay. Enrique Delgado Garcia, who lost his life nearly 2 months ago, and like I said in my intro, we have not heard squat diddly peep ever since then. And we did a whole video on this channel into Maura Healey's very tone-deaf speech during the MSP recruit graduation ceremony, which Enrique would have likely attended if he was still alive. But we haven't heard anything ever since then, ever since they hired that third-party investigator, David Meyer, who also has ties to the Suffolk County DA's office. So a lot of people are wondering, are we looking at another potential cover-up? Well, let's find out and see. So Boston 25 Investigates has been working to get answers, as a lot of people are, especially LTL, about the culture at the Massachusetts State Police Training Academy, which again, we've done a couple of videos now at this point going into some of the former hazing incidents that have been reported, not only by Boston 25, but a lot of other local news media outlets as well too. And they started looking after the incident following the sudden death of Enrique Delgado Garcia. On October 9th, 185 new troopers graduated from the State Police Academy, but remember, 99 had dropped out prior to graduation with unspecified reasons saying so, and I can only imagine this was part of what they were digging into at Boston 25. He told the audience why he wanted to be a state trooper. So yeah, during the event, before Maura Healey stepped up to the plate, as well as Andrea Campbell, giving their very tone-deaf statements regarding this investigation, they played a clip of Enrique Delgado Garcia talking about why he wanted to be a state trooper and what he was hoping to accomplish, and which is just incredibly sad. As to my knowledge, Enrique's family didn't attend the graduation ceremony. In fact, some of his family members and friends were protesting outside of the graduation, wondering why the heck the graduation even took place in the first place. And that was my big question as well too, is if there is an active investigation going on within this recruit class, why has graduation continued to commence? There could be, if it's a criminal investigation, right, and you're interviewing witnesses that are within this RTT class, there could potentially be a suspect within this class. I mean, somebody had to have been responsible for carrying out this absolutely tragic unalivement of Enrique, whether it was accidental or not. It happened, and somebody in that graduating class potentially could be responsible. So I tend to agree with his cousin who was asking that same exact question. Why is this graduation ceremony still being followed through? And I think that's why they started to dig in a little bit more. At least here on Boston 25, they seem to be the only ones who are really digging their heels into this. So Sources familiar with the investigation tell 25 Investigates that he suffered broken bones or missing teeth and a spinal injury. Sources also say he was in the ring with someone else when he stumbled onto the mat but stood back up. And again, if you've been following Shot in the Gulf, he's been covering this case extremely closely as well too. And according to some of his sources, it seemed like the person that he was in the ring with was trained in boxing and combative sport specific to that. So it was less of a training exercise and it seemed more like a fixed fight. The fight was allowed to continue though despite this. So again, it seems like there might be some legitimacy. He then collapsed following a blow to the head. So that to me smells an awful lot like what could have potentially happened inside 34 Fairview. 25 Investigates asked Massachusetts State Police through an open records request for documented reasons, which anybody can request. You don't have to be a person of the media to request that. Anybody can. And sometimes I believe there is a fee, but in this case, they're asking for $176,000 plus, which is somebody within the MSP, even the Canton Police Department, that is somebody's salary. I think that was actually close to what Chip Proctor's salary was, no? For documented reasons why recruits leave the academy before their graduation, including their exit interviews. We asked for those exit interviews from the last 3 recruit training troops, or RTTs. So this is and I'm going to pull it up now, request that they had filed, sent in. This is a request under the Massachusetts Public Records Law. I am requesting that I be provided a copy of the following records: any and all documentation from recruit members of the RTT 88, 89, and 90th who left the training class prior to graduation. And remember, too, if you haven't checked out my video on the 99 MSP recruits that had dropped out right before graduation for this specific RTT class, definitely check it out, because we also go into some of the other incidents that had happened in previous years and dating back to upwards of 15 or 20 years that were reported by local news media stations. So this isn't something new that's been happening. Hazing has been going on within this specific academy for decades. Any internal communications, emails, memos related to the departure, official reports, evaluations, or investigations that explain the circumstances of the departure, exit interviews, the public records law requires you to provide me with a written response within 10 business days. If you cannot comply with my request, you are statutorily required to provide an explanation in writing. Sincerely, Carrie Kavanaugh, Boston 25. So, Massachusetts State Police responded with a fee assessment of, check it, $176,000 and $431. I don't know how you get specific down to that dollar, but all right, right? Just to review the records we asked for, right? Largely, it was a fee to review the records to see if they were allowed to release them under Massachusetts public records law. The written response said in part, again, please note the majority of the responsive records may be exempt in their entirety from disclosure, meaning we ain't gonna share anything that we don't want to share with you. We don't care. Which is why, it feels like this is almost like a bail hearing, right? We're going to set the fee so high that it's absolutely preposterous for anybody, especially a local news media station like Boston 25. It's not like they're only a subset of NBC, right? I don't know what kind of budget they're working for, but I imagine that $176,000 is probably way out of their budget for requesting stuff like this, since they have more than just this particular case that they're covering. We shouldn't have to pay almost $200,000 to get this information. Exactly. The executive director of the New England First Amendment Coalition stated, that's the region's leading advocate for First Amendment freedoms and the public's right to know about government. Yes, and this is the number one thing that people are wanting to know about. And not only just the public, but first and foremost, Enrique's family. His family, his friends, at the very least, let them know, because they have questions and they're turning to not only hiring their own attorneys, right? But they're turning to outside independent media outlets to express their concerns about this investigation, how it's being handled, and asking questions. And that's just not right. And I get it. I get you're conducting an investigation, and sometimes you don't want to leak certain information out to the public as to compromise the investigation. But I mean, this is a contained matter. This happened within a specific group of people within a specific academy. And it's not like you don't know who the potential suspect could be. It could be a million different people, right? This was allegedly caught on camera. Like, somebody was filming it. I don't know if there are cameras in the training facility. I imagine there are. There was an instructor present, right? This was a, quote, training exercise, so there had to have been somebody of employment who was supervising this exercise. And not to mention all the other recruits who were participating in said exercise. So, again, I mean, at the very least, let the freaking family know what's going on, man. I mean, why leave them in the dark? Why is this taking as long as it is? Meanwhile, you have no problem arresting a factually innocent woman within, what, how many days? Like less than 72 hours, slapping cuffs on her. These are our tax dollars that are being spent, yes, on the state police training program. We have a right to know whether or not that program is operating safely, or whether it's just teeing up another tragedy to occur somewhere down the road, Silverman said. And, you know, it's so funny because I think about this all the time. As taxpayers, you are investing in these programs, right? But as an obligation, it's part of a duty. It's part of law, right? If you don't pay your taxes, you go to prison, right? But it's crazy because these programs rely on our money, on your money. You are the lifeblood of these training programs, and you should have all of the information. You should have access to every single thing. In fact, you should get itemized statements. I mean, this is total different rabbit hole of which I'm going down to, but I mean, as essentially an investor in these programs, you deserve 100%, 110% transparency as to what is going on, who's being hired, what they're getting paid, because it's your money. It's your money. Where's the trust in that, right? While Mass State Police believe what we asked for was exempt from public records law for a personnel exception, experts we spoke with say law around this isn't quite so clear. The Supreme Judicial Court, our state Supreme Court, hasn't ruled on whether or not exit interviews specifically fall within Exemption C, said Jesse Rossman, the legal director who we've seen pop up a lot recently in headlines, not only in support of this case, first and foremost, but also, too, in the Karen Reed case, who filed a brief on behalf of Karen Reed supporting her in her SJC appeal, which is coming up on November 6th, so very, very, very soon, which is calling for federal investigation into possible systematic concerns at the Massachusetts State Police Academy. Taking even a step further back from the public records law right now, there are serious questions that are being asked in the Commonwealth by the public about what is happening in the MSP Academy, in the MSP, right? Because that's where it starts before they get into the major leagues, right? So we want to know if there's an unaliver, somebody who should be held responsible and accountable for unaliving him, they should be held accountable. They should serve time, go to prison, just as anybody would in any assault case. Why is there an exception here, right? But if you don't look like one of their own, right? You don't look like a Brian Tolley, you don't look like a Chip Proctor, or Yuri Buchanan, one of the only ones who actually had a head of hair on his head, you don't qualify. If your skin tone is different, if your sex is different, your race is different, you are not part of the club that gets this level of protection. In their own literature, Massachusetts State Police shares statements from recruits from their exit interviews about why they left the academy. So this is actually, and I downloaded this, this is like a MSP, I guess, physical fitness guide. And as I was scrolling through it, it's actually pretty interesting. And I'm going to go through some of it with you right now about like what is required, I guess, for you in order to succeed throughout the academy from a physical fitness standpoint. And it seems pretty standard. I mean, if you're somebody who's very active, I go to the gym at least 4 to 5 times a week. I enjoy it. I enjoy working out. I enjoy fitness and health. For me, a lot of this just seems very basic for most people to maintain, especially if you're somebody who considers yourself relatively healthy. So it's just adding even more peculiarity to the events that took place. And I think you're going to understand why as I'm talking and going through it. So this is the Massachusetts State Police 90th RTT Physical Fitness Preparation Guide. Excuse me. So there's a disclaimer. We're going to go through that. And then all of these like overtraining, aerobic exercises. And again, it's just like as you go through this seems like pretty standard stuff if you're into health and fitness, which I imagine if you're joining a police academy or anything that requires some level of physical fitness, you'd already likely be into. But again, let's check it out. So the disclaimer, this preparation guidance is intended to provide current and accurate physical fitness information that can be utilized in preparation for a recruit physical fitness program. It is offered as an informational aid only and is not intended to render individual, professional, or medical advice, right? Just like we are not medical professionals or law enforcement here on this channel. Any discomfort, injuries, or questions regarding the capability of a person to perform any of the tests, programs, or activities set forth in this guide should be referred to the individual's medical practitioner. Consult your physician, yada, yada. All right, so physical fitness. Let's go through this quick introduction. Preparedness is paramount to your success in completing a training regimen in the Massachusetts State Police Academy. Statistics have shown that 74% of people that fail to successfully complete the training program leave within the first 48 hours, citing not being properly prepared to meet the physical demands of training. I mean, again, if you're Sergeant Bukkake, right? Like, Ducky Gate is big. Like, you're gonna put in a lot of steps. You might break that 10,000 steps a day. I mean, you might have to duck walk. And injuries related to not being physically prepared to meet the physical demands of training. In order to increase your chances of successfully completing the training program, it is essential to participate in a proper fitness routine before entering the State Police Academy. And again, it just seems very kind of standard if you're already into fitness. And if you're not, right? And you're just looking to, eat donuts and dip it in your coffee all day and just sit desk duty like Will Ferrell and the other guys. So arriving day one at a healthy body weight. Arriving overweight or obese will exponentially reduce your chances of being successful. That's very blunt. You should be ready to train day one without the burden of having to lose excess weight that may negatively impact your training. The only control you'll have while here at the academy is of your fitness level. I mean, not for nothing, like Bukkake, Tully, Chip Proctor, like none of them look particular. And like what, DeChico, like there were a couple of guys who looked like, I don't know, like after a couple of years in the MSP, they packed in a couple of LBs. So I think it's kind of ironic. But again, that's what happens when you get chalked down to duck duty, right? You cannot out-train a bad diet. Your body needs proper fueling before and after training. Yeah, plenty of coffee and donuts, right? Cardiovascular and respiratory endurance. Running will be an everyday occurrence during physical training after. I mean, I hate running, but I'm more of a Stairmaster gal. Distances will range from 3 to 5 miles. In addition to daily runs, prepare for movement, running, and walking of 50 to 60 miles a week. I mean, again, it's like if you just, it's not that shocking to me. I don't know. If you exercise regularly, this is just kind of standard. Don't set your goals to accomplish just the minimum standards, as you'll be expected to give 100% effort at all times. A goal in your training regimen would be so to accomplish a 3-mile run without walking at 8 minutes and 30 seconds a mile. Okay, so 25 minutes and 30 seconds, I guess, total, which, I mean, if you've ever been in high school, running a mile is like a standard requirement of passing, at least in New York State, of passing gym class, right? I mean, I walked that whole thing because I hate running. You couldn't pay me enough money in the world to run, right? But most people who, played sports and whatever, were active in high school, could run a mile in like 7 to 9 minutes, no problem. So again, this is pretty okay. Like, you don't need to be super duper ripped, right? Conor McGregor or anything like that. At minimum, males should be able to perform 30 push-ups in 1 minute. Okay. Females should be able to perform 15 push-ups in a minute. Males should be able to perform a bench press of 99% of their body weight, and females 59%. Example, a male that weighs 185 pounds should be able to bench press 183 pounds. A female who weighs 140 pounds should be able to bench press 82 pounds. If you lack upper body strength and start with push-ups, with bench press, okay, so then like they're like, oh, start with push-ups and everything. But when you look at like even the graduation videos that they played throughout the ceremony, not even just talking about Enrique's video that they totally used to exploit him and the case and beef up how, oh, we care about him and we care about this investigation and look at us, we're memorializing him. Yeah, okay. They all look pretty, like they look like regular healthy human beings. They don't look particularly overly athletic, right? Like they're playing in the NFL. They don't look like they eat bland chicken and veggies for dinner every night and drink bulletproof coffee, right? And for breakfast, like they look like pretty normal, healthy human beings, right? And all this to say, why would Enrique need to be particularly bulked up and trained in a boxing exercise, right? So again, and like usually when you have somebody entering a ring, wrestling, boxing, kickboxing, MMA, you're matching weight classes. So that would be my other question is like, what kind of weight class was the person that he was fighting, right? And I thought this was interesting. So mental preparation. Because again, you look at all this stuff and this just looks pretty like, okay. I don't know. Not for everybody. Not everybody's into fitness. But if you are, I imagine you'd be more drawn to do something like this. The State Police Academy is as mentally demanding as it is physically demanding. Oh, we know. Attending training at the State Police Academy is a very serious commitment that will affect you and your families. The training is paramilitary in nature and intentionally stressful to prepare trainees for future work in high-stress situations. So I imagine that it's probably more effed from a psychological standpoint based on the hazing stuff that we've read than the physical ailments, at least from like the exercise portions of it, right? You will be away from your family and friends for 24 weeks with very limited contact during the training week. It sounds like prison. Below are actual comments recorded on exit interviews of trainees who decided to leave the training program. Psychologically more difficult than I thought. I feel I was pushed to the outer edge, a lot stricter and tougher than I thought. The training is more intense than anticipated. For me, everything seemed to snowball on me, doing everything wrong, fell behind, got stressed out. I've never been this stressed out in my life. I am not psychologically fit to keep attending this program. I trained myself physically, not mentally. Very short section on mental preparedness. If that's like the number one reason why, 74% or however many on average they say drop out within the first 48 hours, drop out is because of the psychological. And you have this like little tiny section that literally gives you no information or recommendations as to what to do. Like, hey, we have a staff psychologist on hand, right? To be there, a counselor to talk things through with you. Limiting contact. Like, what is the point of limiting contact with their family and friends during their training period? Like, what usefulness does that actually do of cutting them off from society altogether and just draining them of any sort of humanity during this they might as well go to prison at that point. And I don't think it's very helpful or productive. Not to say that I've ever been in any kind of boot camp or training academy, but I mean, what purpose does that serve? I don't know. What say you? What do you think? Preventing overuse injuries. The 6S approach to analyzing the cause of overuse injuries from running. Okay. Footwear. That's from running. Reducing pain and injury. Immediate care of overuse injuries is kept simple by using the RICE principle. RICE is an acronym for rest, ice, compression, and elevation. These techniques reduce further trauma to the injured area, decrease blood flow, and keep swelling on affected area to a minimum. NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as Advil, Motrin, and acetaminophen may also aid in reducing signs of symptoms. I could think of some other other remedies, right? It is recommended that you obtain the advice of a physician before taking any medication. Well, I mean, do you provide medical care on scene? That's the other thing too, is like, do you have an in-house doctor, physician, right? This just sounds so much like prison. Closing. Understanding the personal benefits and barriers of exercise and developing the skills and resources for regular physical activity are important in maintaining a planned approach to exercise. What motivates one person to become and remain physically active will differ from another. The Health and Fitness Unit at the Massachusetts State Police Academy wants you to succeed. Do you though? Or do you just want to, I don't know, do you want to just carbon copy more cone heads and create your own little weird cult? It is hoped that providing you with the previous information, you will have the basics to initiate or modify your current physical fit. So this is all about the physical. All about the physical, which is pretty like standard stuff, again, if you're into health and fitness. And one little mini section on mental. Right? Like, this is all stuff I do at the gym. It's just like standard stuff. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're working out 5 days a week. It's just, there needs to be more of an emphasis on the mental if you're taking this paramilitary like approach, right? And if the reason why most people, and we heard it from one of Enrique's former recruit mates, talking about, his name is escaping me at the moment, but he interviewed with a couple of different news stations, saying it was the mental. He was like, yeah, I was in the Army Reserves and I was ready for the physical, but it would, what they made me do from a psychological standpoint, like stay up all night with the lights on, coloring in my clothes, belly crawling and sweeping up the floor, the entire floor of, I guess, my unit with my clothes on my stomach, bear crawling, making fun of his race, his accents. I mean, it's just, appalling and disgusting. And I can see where, people go in thinking, oh, yeah, I could totally do this, right? And just, I'm already physically fit. I go to the gym 5 days a week. It's going to be a cakewalk, right? But there's only that little tiny, like almost footnote, afterthought of the mental preparedness. And that's where most of the, in my opinion, hazing and ABUSE comes into play. I think it's important to note that we're not seeking names or any kind of personal information, but instead the very reasons why these cadets quit the program. Exactly. We don't care. It's again, it's like a lot like the juror inquiry into the verdict for Karen Reed, right? Did you acquit on counts 1 and 3? Yes or no? Okay, cool. Goodbye. Have a nice life. We don't care about anything else about you. We don't care the substance. We don't care anything. It's the same thing. Since Delgado Garcia's death, the Academy suspended boxing activities, and they also had a boxing league as well, too, which we uncovered in one of our videos. And the Attorney General appointed an independent investigator to examine the circumstances around how he died, David Meyer, the Suffolk County guy. But advocates for government transparency aren't sure that's enough. They should be working on behalf of the public to come up with a way to be more transparent. Yep. So instead of just relying on these fees and sending out a bill for almost $200,000 because they need more money. Yeah, the MSP definitely needs more money because they've totally proven themselves to be worthy of it. It's like, what are you even doing with that $176K? Like, where does that go? Where exactly does that go? How is that being dispensed? How is that being used? To improve your academy? Clearly not. And I can't imagine that this is the first time that they've put out a ridiculous request for this. The state police in this case should be working with journalists, yes, and others concerned about the situation with this cadet to make sure that enough information is provided where we can get a full understanding of what's going on. Boston 25 News is not paying the $176,431 fee. However, we are continuing to work with the state police on this request. We have an appeal. We also appealed, the response with the Secretary of State's office. So I also downloaded this PDF as well, too. So this was on October 1st. So John Mon, before he dipped out, this was, I guess, his one last, hoorah, right? Your September 18th. So remember, Enrique Delgado Garcia passed away on the 13th, and on the 18th, just days later, Boston 25 put in this request. They don't get back to them for, what is that, over 2 weeks? October 1st? Over 2 weeks, or just under 2 weeks. Just under 2 weeks, they don't get back. Dear Miss Kavanaugh, the Department of State Police is in receipt of your September 18th, 2024 public records request. Upon initial review, it appears that a majority of the responsive records may be exempt in their entirety from disclosure pursuant to MGL, yada yada. However, this cannot be confirmed without a full review of the responsive documents. Please be advised, the department hereby assesses a reasonable fee. $176K is somebody's whole ass salary. Like, it is. It's somebody's whole, it's Chip Proctor's salary for the production of records that are responsive to your September 18th, 2024. So, like, sending over a couple PDFs, I'm not understanding where the $170K is coming from, right? Who's getting paid off? Permits an agency to assess a fee for time spent segregating or redacting records after the first 4 hours performed. look, if this is anything like how the MSP handled interviews for the Karen Reed case, right? The Karen Reed investigation, we know that shiz ain't lasting more than like 5 to 10 minutes. The report is probably no more than as long as this email. So don't tell me that this is going to take hours and hours of your time, your precious freaking time, going through this, because you know you're passing this off either to some intern who's not getting paid for this, while you just sit there and continue to twiddle your thumbs and quack about how hard your job is when it's in fact quacking not. Where such segregating and redacting is required by law. Segregation time is defined as the time used to review records to determine what portions are subject to redaction or withholding. 26 or other legally applicable privileges, yada yada. To redact means to delete. Yeah, we know what redact means. We know what redact means, but thank you. To delete or otherwise expurgate, I've never heard that word in my life, that part of a record that is exempt from disclosure under MGL yada yada, clause 26, or other legally applicable privileges then from non-exempt material. The department's fee assessment for your request was calculated as follows. I'm so curious to see how they came up with this calculation, because they're like, well, there are 3 classes that you're requesting for, so there's a lot of interns that we're gonna have to bring in and not pay. So you have requested the following records: any and all documentation from recruit members of the RTT 88, 89, 90 who left the training class prior to graduation. You specified in your request that the documentation should include, but not limited to, any internal communications, emails, memos related to the departure, official reports, evaluations, or investigations that explain the circumstances of the departure, and exit interviews. As you know, the Massachusetts Court of Appeals, in the recent case of Friedman versus Division of Administration Appeals 103, yada yada yada, stated that requests made pursuant to GL yada yada must provide the agency with a sufficient description of the records sought so as to enable a professional employee of the agency who is familiar with the subject area of the request to locate the record with a reasonable amount of effort. The court cautioned that the public records law does not require public agencies simply to provide the requested records no matter the burden imposed, nor does it require public agencies to shunt aside their principal public functions to do so. Rather, we like to exploit our victims during graduation ceremonies. Rather, a rule of reason governs both the obligation of public agencies to respond and to provide records, and also the conduct of requesters of public documents. See Globe Newspaper Company versus Commissioner of Education, yada yada yada. Agencies must read FOIA requests as drafted, and broad sweeping requests lacking specificity are not sufficient. Center for Immigration Studies versus United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. The reasonable description requirement is a necessary bulwark of the public records law, as the law was not intended to reduce government agencies to full-time investigators on behalf of requesters. And some more case law there. The department has conducted a search of its records based on your request. The department has, through the Executive Office of Technology, Services, and Security, conducted preliminary searches of department emails based on your requests for any internal communications, emails, memos related to the departure. This search resulted in approximately 135,885 items. Furthermore, in researching parts 2 and 3 of your request, the department located 267 files that may be responsive to your request. As a state agency with the responsibility for maintaining extensive confidential information, the department has an obligation to ensure proper procedures are maintained to prevent the dissemination of information that is protected from disclosure by law. And I'm fairly certain that more and more recruits are going to speak up anyways. So, I mean, you're just pushing off the inevitable, right? You're just paving the pathway for more recruits, like some of those who have already spoken up, to come forward and tell their stories about what happened and why they decided to drop out before graduation. I have no doubt about that, especially as more and more of this unfolds and more people put in these requests too. Segregation time is required for the department to review the potentially responsive records because these documents may contain information that is protected from public disclosure. So again, just redact it. Like, you don't have some intern you can shovel this off to. I'm not really understanding where the 176K comes from and how that was factored in, right? Additionally, the records are reasonably likely to contain information relating to an identifiable person, which is also exempt from disclosure pursuant to yada yada. Because this information is personal information, because that information is personal information that is prohibited from being disclosed. Personal information is defined as any information concerning an individual which, because of name, identifying number, mark, or description, can be readily associated with a particular individual. And again, like, okay, so like that, they don't also have to report on that as well too, right? And this is the same argument that Lally gave those jurors who came forth and spoke up following the mistrial declaration about what the counts 1 and 3 vote was. It's the same response. They're like, hey, by the way, we wanted to let you know, we also communicated with the defense, but we wanted to come forth to you as well and let you know what actually happened in that room. And he was like, no. Like, I mean, that's all well and good, but if we pursue this any further, we're gonna have to dox you, and like, we can guarantee that all your personal identifying information is gonna be kept secret from the public, right? It's the same freaking bogus excuse, pretty much copied and pasted. Given that in total there are approximately 135,885 email items and approximately 267 case files that the department must review to determine, so I'm curious if the 267 is part of that 135. If they are responsive to your request, and then make redactions as required by law. This will impose an onerous burden on the department, which will have to devote limited resources. Are you freaking kidding me? Limited resources to review and redact these records, but you have no problem paying Chip Proctor 6 figures, a hefty 6 figures, or Bukwaki a hefty 6-figure salary for the Great Ducky Brigade. And God knows how much toll he was making. I'm sure somebody out on the interwebs knows, but I can only imagine how much he was getting paid. And even now that he's been transferred out and rehomed, I mean, I'm sure he's still getting paid a pretty penny. It's so deaf dumb. And black kids trailblazing me, babe. Alright, anyways. Given the volume of the information requiring review, the department's good faith estimate costs of... But how do you arrive at that number? Like, this does not... You're just saying this is how many emails we found. Emails of what, though? Like, there's no specifying anything. The department estimates conservatively and in good faith that it will expend an average of 3 minutes to review and redact each email. State police petition applying 3 minutes per email review and $25 hourly rate approved. State police petition applying 3... So they're saying it's going to take 3 minutes per email review and I guess per request and redaction. I don't know how they estimated that go time. And again, who's getting paid the $25 an hour? And then they're like, here's the math, right? 135,885 emails is calculated at 3 minutes times 135,885 equals 407,665 minutes. 407,665 minutes divided by 60 minutes provide approximately 6,794.25 hours at a rate of $25 hour, resulting in a cost of $169,856 as relates to the 70. Oh, and then the 267 plus the okay, yeah, that makes so much sense here. So much sense. As relates to the 267 case files that may be responsive to parts 2 and 3 of your request, the department estimates conservatively and in good faith that it will expend an average of 1 hour to review and redact each file. So we went from 3 minutes to these specific case files. I guess maybe these were write-ups of troubled recruits, right, for misbehaving, not doing the bear crawls on the hot pavement, right? Disobeying their command. That gets bumped up now to an hour of time for review. Accordingly, the good faith estimate for reviewing the 267 files is calculated at an hour at 267 files equals 267 hours at a rate of $25 an hour, resulting in a cost of $6,675. Department would provide 4 free freaking gratis. -4 gratis hours at a rate of $25 an hour at such. But who are you paying the $25 an hour to? Like, that's who's doing the redacting? That's what I want to know. Whose job is it? How many people are getting paid that $25 an hour? It seems like, is this one person? Because you're saying at a rate of $25 an hour. But is this going towards one specific person? Or not? And not for nothing. Not in today's day and age. I can't believe that everything is done manually. Like, there has to be some sort of automated process in place. And this is just my question. And if there isn't, why aren't you implementing that? Why are you having people manually go through these things? Yes, you can always have the human reviewer, right? But, like, there's no way to automate that, really? Really, with all these programs and softwares out there? Give me a freaking break. Like, come on now. With all the hundreds of millions of dollars that you probably have, I mean, I'd be so curious as to how much money, and you guys know probably better than me. I mean, you're the ones who are paying Massachusetts state taxes, so I'm curious. I mean, they're probably sitting on a freaking gold mine, right? Especially when people buy into this stupid stuff of, oh yeah, we'll pay you $176K. That's ridiculous. This estimate represents an actual and good faith representation. The cost is necessary, reasonable, and not designed to limit, deter, or prevent access to requested public records. But girl, Allison, it is though. It is. That's why people set bail. That's why courts set bail at extreme numbers, right? When they don't want someone to make bail because they don't want to let that person out back on the streets. They want to make it as difficult as possible for that person, the perpetrator, to go back out into society. And that's exactly what you're doing here with the press and with the public. You're restricting that access as much as possible by raising that ceiling as high as you can. So you make it so it's extremely difficult for anybody to request what should be information available to all, especially Enrique's family, especially. The department expressly reserves the right to supplement this estimate once it's able to determine the number of responsive records which require redactions. And again, it's like, so not only are we paying $176K, but we also don't know the product that we're going to get. we're just gonna, yeah, sure, we'll give you almost $200,000, but we don't even know what we're gonna get in return, how much you're gonna redact out of that, right? So this is so dumb. Ugh, it's so frustrating. Again, please note that the majority of the responsive records may be exempt in their entirety from disclosure. If you wish to proceed with this request, please contact me to arrange for your payments, right? We're happy to take your money. We're not going to tell you what we're going to give you, though. Please be aware that the given amount of information being requested, the department cannot project a timetable as to what. So not only that, they're like, we're going to ask you for $176K, but we can't, and we're not going to tell you what you're going to get back. Like what information is actually going to be left unredacted in all of this, but we can't even tell you when we're going to deliver it, but we want payment now. That's absolutely ridiculous. Holy smokes. The department is happy to set up a call with you to discuss your request and the department's fee estimate. Please advise if you would like to arrange a time to speak, yada yada. You can do so here. Thanks, Allison, for nothing. So there you have it, folks. I will link that in the description box below. But yeah, the MSP, they're shaking the press down now, right? It makes me further believe that this could be another cover-up. Very well, very easily. There's been allegations of people signing NDAs within the MSP as well too. I mean, I obviously I can't confirm that, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, even still, as far as I know, if you sign an NDA, if there's evidence of illegal criminal activity, then would that not negate the point of an NDA, right? And I think it's disgusting how these agencies, these government agencies, right, are using and weaponizing NDAs into scaring and manipulating these poor MSP recruits. In the words of the great Meatball Morris, it needs to stop, but it does. It does. It's extremely frustrating, and I really hope, and I don't know if anybody is going to see this in terms of any of the former MSP recruits, but if you do, you're watching this, just know you have a whole community of people who have your back. Get yourself an attorney, like ASAP, and speak the F up. Do it. Do it. If you know something was wrong, you are doing more harm than good by protecting these a-holes, because they won't. When push comes to shove, they do not have your back. We've seen this happen time and time and time and time and time again. Not only with this case, but with the Officer John O'Keefe case. They will not help you. They won't. They will, as Alan Jackson says, look the other way. And with that being said, if you want to keep up to date with the latest in regards to the Enrique Delgado Garcia case, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you do not miss that next update from me. And make sure you hit that like button, because this is newsworthy news. This is, and I'm so happy that, you know, even a station that's a little bit more than just local news media, but kind of like the mainstream media, is starting to pick this up, and hopefully more. Hopefully more news media outlets like the Globe, right? The Herald, NBC, right? Not just their subset for the local news, but NBC as a whole. Senators, politicians. Who even knows? The friggin' future president is taking notice and watching all this stuff that's going on. By you liking a video like this and talking about it, not even just my video, but other people's videos, this help gets the word out. This gets more people in the conversation. And that's why I always make this call to action at the end, is because I just want more people talking about Enrique Delgado Garcia, because he was somebody's friend. He was somebody's son, somebody's cousin. And he deserves so much better. He did. He deserves so much more than what the little amount of life he spent on this earth. What he got. And you could tell, even just watching like that video, that very short clip that they played at the 90th RTT graduation ceremony, he would have been one of the good ones. With that being said, have a great weekend. We have a members video coming up very, very soon. And I will see you all next week. Have a great weekend.